Hello, ladies. Don't mind the forces that don't want more women participation in politics. So it will not happen. Great. So welcome back, ladies. Sorry for the break in transmission. I think we have about 30 minutes together. Let's make it count. So I was sharing about so we talked about the qualifications. We talked about some of the reasons why women don't participate in politics. I had started talking about the skills that you would need to participate in politics. Now, leadership skills. As I was saying, leaders are not born. Leadership skills can be developed as with any other skill. Okay, ladies? So, leadership, what is leadership? Just basic definition. It's the ability to influence people, so have a vision and influence people to support you on that vision. It can be developed, all right? And this is slightly linked to managerial skills, okay? So, oftentimes we develop managerial skills by actually doing this type of work, but the most important thing are the leadership skills, okay? Great, let's quickly move on. So, communication skills, it cannot be overemphasized. All right. And remember that we have written communication, verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and then even listening skills. All right. Unfortunately, I don't have a female example, but when you think about the importance of communication skills, think about Obama. All right. I mean, he was so persuading, he was so convincing, people were drawn to him. He just used communication to charm everyone, right? And then the next thing we knew, we were all chanting, "Yes, we can." All right. So, communication skills are very, very important if you want to build a career in politics. All right. Great. Interpersonal skills. Ladies, this is something that honestly comes to us naturally. All right. But I think that what has happened is oftentimes when you don't have the intellectual capacity to back it up, then you think you have to be overtly nice, or I don't know, you have to put on a very alluring demeanor, which is oftentimes misread. Interpersonal skills is the ability, okay, to bring multiple stakeholders. So, I mean, you might be dealing with one person, but why it's very important in politics is there are always multiple stakeholders when you're talking about politics. There's the community, there's your peers, there's your allies, the people above you, people under you. And oftentimes it's about how you bring all these interests, okay, to achieve a common good or a purpose. So having interpersonal skills is very, very critical. Okay, great. So we talked about leadership skills, we talked about communication skills, we talked about interpersonal skills, critical thinking, and problem solving. Now, to be honest, at the end of the day, participating in politics is not about ourselves. Ignore all the examples we currently have in Africa. It's about the common good of the people. It's about public good. All right. So you have to literally, people have entrusted their lives into your hands. And so it's about thinking what will be the best thing for these people. All right. It's about making the right decisions. Okay. This is what informs and influences policy. Okay. So at the end of the day, having critical thinking and problem solving skills would be a huge asset if you're a woman interested in politics. Okay. So we've talked about the skills, we've talked about qualification, we've talked about competence. Finally, we're going to talk about the attributes. Okay? There are certain attributes that if you have, all right, would make it easier to build a career in politics. What are some of these attributes? Compassion, all right? Again, ignore the examples we have in Africa, maybe but for a few. The truth is, as I said earlier, people have entrusted their lives to you, right? So some of the responsibilities of government is the security of lives and property. All right. If you don't have compassion, all right, which means that you actually think about, what will happen if I were the one in the shoes of these people? What would I want? What would be best for me? Then at the end of the day, you're not going to make the right decisions. All right. So compassion is an attribute that's very important if you want to build a career in politics. What else? Integrity. Yes, that word. Very, very, very important. All right. Again, ignore the examples we have, but you're supposed to be a person of integrity. Integrity is basically saying that this person will do what they say they will do when they said they will do something. Okay. So that's what leads to accountability. All right. When you have integrity, then people can hold you by your word. So when you campaign, you make promises. All right. When you are in an office, you have a mandate to achieve and fulfill certain things. Integrity is what ensures that you stick to it. All right. And you stick to maybe the approach that is in the best interest of the people and does not serve your personal interests or the interests of the minority. Okay. So integrity is very key. Something else that's very important is commitment. All right. And when you start to think about commitment, think about hard work, think about dedication. All right. I work in public sector now, and I can tell you for free, it is not easy. Like it takes a lot of commitment because literally the lives of these people is hanging on your shoulders. You know that the decisions you make, the steps you take is influencing thousands, millions of people in the case of Lagos State where I work. You see what I mean? So it is very important to have compassion, to have integrity, to be committed, to be willing to work hard, all right, and to be dedicated. Okay. Um, what else do I have here? So tolerance, ladies, tolerance. And it's interesting because these are all attributes that we should have as women. That's the truth. These are all attributes that we should have as women. It helps us, even if you're building a career now, if you're in school and you want to build a career, these are all attributes that will help you. All right. But specifically in terms of building a career in politics, these will be assets. Tolerance. There are lots of challenges that will come. All right. People issues most times, but with tolerance, all right, you can actually persevere. If you have the focus that this is for the greater good, this is why we're doing this is why we're making this policy, this is why we're making this decision, then it is much easier, okay, to be tolerant. Discipline is another one. It's very important to be disciplined, okay? Oftentimes with resources, it is a lack of discipline that makes us, you know, um, use resources meant for the public good for ourselves. It's indiscipline, lack of accountability, lack of integrity. So even though we've talked about qualifications, we've talked about skills, we've talked about competence, I wanted to also share some of these attributes that will actually help you to build a career in politics. Great. I hope this is we're getting this. I hope you're jotting your notes and everything. So let's quickly move on to some of the types of jobs we have in politics. I know some people have been waiting because I know some people are planning to make this decision, hopefully. So very similar to what I spoke about when I talked about qualifications and the fact that, to be honest, there are no specific qualifications for you to participate in politics. I'm going to share with you the types of jobs in politics. But I wanted to share something. When you start to think about work in terms of roles and jobs, remember that there's sectors. So there's private sector, there's public sector, there's the non-profit sector. Now, when you think about private sector, you know about consulting firms. Believe it or not, the one of the biggest clients of most consulting firms, including the big fours, is government. All right. And they play a huge role in actually influencing how government goes about what it does, or informing, maybe doing some research that informs government policy. All right. So I wanted to say that just to expand our minds a little bit as to how you can participate in politics from different angles. Okay. So there is elective office, which is the primary way you can participate in politics, by running for office. All right. But there's several other things that you can do to actually influence the decisions and the outcomes of the public good. Okay. So there are three major ways. All right. There are three major ways to do this. The first one is through advocacy politics. Now, the advocacy organizations, I think it would be fair to say Women in Politics NG, in one way, shape, or form, plays a role in advocacy. And basically, what advocacy organizations do is that they represent a certain issue or set of issues, or they represent a certain segment of people, all right? And they work at influencing government's decisions in the interest of these issues or in the interest of these people that they represent. So one very common example I can think of, and I think that affects all of us, is Not Too Young to Run. So they are a good example of an advocacy organization, for example. So what they're doing is to influence government to encourage young people to get involved in politics. All right. So, and how have they done this? They've done this through events. They've done this through campaigns in terms of communication. They've done this through several influencing the legislative agenda. But all they're doing is actually something that would influence the outcome, all right, of government and politics. So, for example, I have a friend who is, I think he's 27 or 28, that's about to run for a representative seat at the state level. The truth is, in the former constitution, he would not be qualified to run, but because of the Not Too Young to Run bill that represented the interests of young people, he can now run. All right. So working for an advocacy organization is one of the ways that you can get involved in politics. All right. Another way you can get involved in politics is through legislative politics. Now, the people who work as staff in the legislative arm of government. Now, the legislative arm of government are the lawmaking arm of government. So you have the executive, you have the legislative, and you have the judiciary, right? These are all people who have been officers, who have been elected into office and represent constituencies. All right. So the staff who work in the legislative office are in one way, shape, or form influencing the outcomes of public good. All right. But oftentimes they represent the legislator that they work for and the interest of the legislator's community. So at that level, you're working on the priorities of the legislator and you're working on the priorities of the constituency that the legislator represents. Okay. So you can participate in politics through advocacy politics, through legislative politics, and the final one will be through electoral politics. All right. So electoral politics will be people who work on the process of the elections. All right. So you could work as a campaign manager, you could work as a media strategist, you could work as a research analyst, So you're working on the entire process, all right, to lead to a successful candidate getting into elective office. All right. You can also work for your government electoral institution. So that's one of the things that you can do as well on the electoral politics. So I think it's very important to note that I hope that you're beginning to see that participating in politics has different options, and all your skills can actually come to bear, when you are trying to participate in politics. Okay, some of the other roles that we would know about are lobbyists, a pollster. So a pollster will be somebody who actually just runs public opinion, so opinion polls. In the US, they're very, very good at this. They actually use it to make predictions ahead of elections because they run so many polls, all right, that they're able to actually categorically say this is how it would influence or otherwise the outcome of the elections. All right. So I talked about the types of jobs in the field of politics. So you have advocacy politics, you have legislative politics, and you have electoral politics. And in all of these categories, you can actually play different roles. In all of these categories, there's an opportunity to be a communication strategist, to be a media strategist, to be a PR person. In all of these organizations, there's an opportunity for research, for just strategic thinking. So it runs across. And like I said, some tend to be non-profit organizations. Some you can do through private sector political consulting, for example. And then others you can do when you are directly in office, whether elective or appointive office. All right. So these are some of the jobs that you can do in the field of politics. So now we've talked about, why women should participate in politics, that women should have if they want to build a career in politics. And then finally, we're going to talk about some of the steps. All right. We're going to talk about some of the steps that you can take if you want to participate in politics. So they say talk is cheap and everyone can afford it. I think by now you're beginning to see that you don't need to study a particular course. You don't need to, be in a specific sector, for example, to participate and make your voice heard in politics. Okay. So finally, let's talk about some of the steps on how you can build a successful career in politics. So the first thing is your objective. All right. What is your objective? Short term, long term. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to be doing? Do you want to play a role from an influencing point of view? Or do you actually want to get in the ring and represent a people? All right. And you need to, as with all things in goal setting, you need to know what are your short-term goals? What are your medium-term goals? What are your long-term goals? What do you need to do in the short term? Do you need to get a qualification? Do you need to develop a certain skill set? All right. What do you need to do? All right. To get you closer to your objectives in building a career in politics. So that's very important. And I think that's the first step. Okay. The second step is to know your environment. Okay. To be honest, this can be your ward, this can be your district, this can be your constituency. But depending on what your objectives are, you need to know where you want to start from. All right. We recently had a hangout in Women in Politics, and we had a very interesting conversation about the notion that all politics is local. And I think there was a consensus that the truth is all politics is local. Whether that means you need to start at a local level is a completely different conversation, and I don't think that's what it means. But the most important thing is that oftentimes you start by representing a group of people, and that representation grows. That's how I see it. Okay. So you need to know your ward, you need to know your district, you need to know your constituency, depending on the level you want to start. Okay. And remember that we're talking about two tracks. We're talking about if you want to go into elective office or if you want to play a supportive role, which we've outlined in the types of jobs. Okay. Great. Now, if you want to go to elective office, all right, join a political party. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, there are no political parties. But the truth is, you cannot influence from the outside. There are structures that guide participation and involvement in electoral processes. You have to join a political party if you want to run for office. However, if you're not going down the path of trying to run for office, you can join political organizations or political groups, or groups like Women in Politics NG that just help you nurture that interest, provide you information, give you access to a network of people, or whatever it is, or an advocacy organization where you volunteer, where you intern, so but just ensure that you are putting yourself in a place that actually helps you um, nurture that interest that you have. So in terms of joining a political party, if you're interested in running for office or otherwise, join an organization, a group, or a network that helps you nurture the interest. The fourth thing is that you should get involved in activities, contribute, and participate. Oftentimes it is people need to know what you can do before they give you an opportunity to do it. And that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, people who do get to do more, because people know that you have that skill, that you have this qualification, that you have this competence, but they would only know that if you were part of them, and if you were actually participating or contributing. If, for example, you were going to meetings where these people of interest meet or come together, and you share certain things, and they know, oh, okay, Bosse seems like she has good communication skills. It might be a good idea to get Bosse to write the next speech, to do the next paper, or something like that. So it is very important to actually not just participate, no, get involved in an organization or join a party, but actually contribute and participate, so people know what you can do and can give you more opportunities or more responsibility. Okay, so what else? Now keep up to date with political information. So now this can be news, this can be just knowledge sessions, information. It is so important to keep up with political news. Because again, remember that there's so many things that come together to influence the decisions, the policies that you make as a person, a woman in politics, whether in elective office or in appointive office, or as a support staff who would help to influence, a legislator's agenda. All right. So being politically savvy in terms of information, having certain knowledge, is very important. And so you have to try to do this. Okay. The sixth point will be build and grow your network. As with all things, politics is about relationships. All right. Especially if you want to go into elective office, it's about relationships, it's about the network that you have built over time. There's the media involved, there's the community involved. There's so many stakeholders that come together to actually influence the success or the outcome of that election. So it's very important to build and to grow your network. Okay. And then finally, but very important, build your brand. And I didn't start with this because, your objective is very important. But once you know that this is what I want to be the president of my country, then you have to build your brand. Who are you? What do you want to be known for? What are your skills? What are your competencies? What do you represent? Who do you represent? So these are very, very important things that you need to know. Once you have your objective clearly outlined, start to build your brand. When they call Bosse, what can they associate her with? All right. Because this will help, when it's time to make a referral, when it's time to make a recommendation, people know, call Bosse. She's the one you need for this and that. Okay. Great, ladies. So we've got 4 minutes to go, and I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we had. I'm sorry if I'm not able to read your comments and answer your questions, but I'm hoping that I've been able to cover it. But some of the questions that we had earlier on, that I'm not sure if we touched on specifically, that I wanted to respond to. There's one here from Saida Juma from Nairobi. She says, there is a notion that to rise in politics, you need to associate yourself with a man. I mean, there were a lot of comments around men, and you women in politics. To be honest with you, I think we addressed it when we talked about confidence and building financial capacity, intellectual capacity, social capacity, psychological capacity. Oftentimes, people will give room to somebody who has capacity. And gender, right? And this is proven, gender doesn't come to play. So there are issues. But I always say, let's channel our energies appropriately. Channel your energy into building yourself. Because the most important thing is, if there were 10 men and a woman, and the woman is the one who has the competence, it wouldn't really matter if she was a woman or a man. All right? They would give her the opportunity because the work needed to get done. So let's channel our, I know the issues exist, and I'm not trying to brush that under the carpet, but I'm saying let's work on these other things and see how it changes the game for us. Ifoma from Lagos says, how can one break the negativity associated with politics? And I think, to be honest, there's a lot of historical baggage when it comes to politics. But again, let's channel our energies appropriately. I'm sure in all our countries, in all our communities, amidst the negative perception, there's one politician that we can say, oh, this person is a woman of integrity. I think she represents the people. And I think that's what's most important. How do you stand out so that you create your own perception, right? And you do not let the general perception be rubbed off on you. It's how you stand out. Namdiso from Swaziland talks about, how do you combat sexual harassment in politics? And it's everywhere. It's in the workplace, whether it's not political, the political landscape. And to be honest with you, it's about knowing what the structures are to address sexual harassment. So within a political party, there's a women's leader, for example. If somebody is harassing you sexually, you should be able to have a channel, all right, to report and address that harassment, because the person shouldn't remain in the party, for example, because that would affect other people. So if you don't deal with it and you think, oh, you know what, I'm just going to let this pass, or I'm just going to leave the party, or I'm just going to leave the organization, then it's just somebody else will fall victim. So I think the most important thing is to identify if there is a channel to address sexual harassment. And oftentimes in most organizations there is. So think about whistleblowing policy, think about a leader that might be neutral that you can speak to, but it would be best to address it so that you can actually prevent somebody else from falling victim. Okay, so time is almost up, but I'm going to answer. So Alexa was saying she doesn't know whether she should stay in the US. Again, Alexa is, what are your objectives? If you think that staying back in the US will serve your objectives in the short term, then stay back, and then maybe coming back home would be a long-term play. I think that's it. Is it possible to have a female president? That was the last question I wanted to answer. Of course it is. I'm the future female president of Nigeria. It's just to believe, to keep working, to keep doing all of these things that we've shared and we've outlined. And I mean, the most important thing is more women need to get involved. We need to be having these type of conversations. We need to be taking some of the steps that I've outlined today. And yeah, I'm sure that we would have more women in politics. Thank you so much, ladies, for participating, for joining the webinar. Thank you to She Leads Africa again for giving me the opportunity. I'm really, really excited that we're beginning to have these conversations across the continent. And please join Women in Politics NG, even if you're not in Nigeria. But I think that, I have someone from Malawi or Mali who has already contacted me saying, we want to do something like this, in Mali. Can you support us? And I think the idea is just looking for the examples and just, trying to actually start these things. Let's create support groups, let's create networks. All right, let's support each other, let's share information to ensure that women actually participate in politics. Okay. So yeah, join She Leads Africa. If you haven't joined, it's She Leads Africa slash sheleadsafrica.org/join. Women in Politics dot Women in Politics NG. We are Women in Politics NG on Instagram, on Facebook. I think on Twitter we're Women Politics NG. I forgot to mention that I just wrote a book about building a conscious career. Um, and I think that, building a career in politics is definitely a conscious career. And it's better when you start early, start to do some of the things that we're talking about. It's never too late to start, but I've just written a book called Building a Conscious Career. And I think it tells you how. In terms of, you can get the book on Amazon. So just go to amazon.com/author/Abosede George-Ogan or go to consciouscareer.com.ng. It was such a delight spending this time with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop me a message, drop a feedback, and hopefully we can do this again soon. Ciao, ladies. Thank you. Bye.